नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने।
Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome. Today is the 5th chapter, which is known as Karma Yoga. Might sound like a repetition, but no. This is Karma Yoga, different from the Karma Yoga which we already studied, because this is Karma Yoga, action and Krishna consciousness. We'll know the difference in upcoming slides. Now, before I get started with this chapter, I would like to just give this takeaway for today. First takeaway for today. Clarifications are good. They are the evidence of understanding, and also that there is an interest. When there is a transfer of knowledge going on between two people, the receiver, whenever he puts forward questions, puts forward doubts, puts forward clarifications which he wants to be done, it is a good sign, because it is always an evidence of interest and understanding. It makes the speaker know that whatever he is speaking is being understood, and the other person is also interested in what is being spoken. And it doesn't matter whether it is spiritual science or material sciences, in both the fields, when clarifications are being asked, it's a very good sign. So we see that Arjuna repeatedly, every chapter is starting with a question here. Now that is a definite sign that Arjuna is interested, and Arjuna is also understanding whatever is being spoken. Only out of understanding questions can be framed. So in this chapter, the question will come because of the apparent clash between what Krishna says in the 3rd chapter and what Krishna says in the 4th chapter. So this is the rough gist of it. In 2nd chapter, after Arjuna giving 5 excuses for not fighting, Krishna breaks them down in the 2nd chapter. From 11th to 30th shloka, he says, he gives us the knowledge of the soul. Then from 31st to 37th shloka of 2nd chapter, Krishna tells us about the prescribed duties, and from 42nd to 45th, he tells us how there is entanglement in these fruitive activities. 46 to 53rd shloka, again, it tells us the process of getting disentangled from this fruitive activities, getting free from this entanglement by devotional service. In 3rd chapter now, from 17th and 18th shloka, the Lord says there is no duty for a person in knowledge. What it means, like for example, Narada is a person of knowledge. Is there any duty? Like, what is his duty that Narada has to accomplish? There is no duty. He is a devotee of the Lord. He is happy in serving the Lord. He is happy in taking the names of the Lord. He is happy in his japa and his sankirtan. He has no duties. So that is very clear in the 3rd chapter, we can understand. In 4th chapter again, Krishna says all kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. It's because of without knowledge, there is no sacrificial work that can happen. And then in the 4th chapter, which we just finished yesterday, Krishna is telling Arjuna to get up and fight. Now, Arjuna has found another excuse. He's like, you're saying there is no duty for a person in knowledge, then you're asking me to get up and fight. Why so? And this is how he says it. This is the question which he comes up with. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punar yogam cha samsashi yachreya etayor ekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. He says, Arjuna says, oh Krishna, first of all you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work and devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of these two is more beneficial? This is like, I'll give you again a common example. You want to go from Mumbai to Pune, and you ask let's say you ask a bus driver, what is the way to go to Pune? And the bus driver tells you, you can go by this road. See, this is a single road. This is the highway. This is Bombay to Pune highway. You just go straight and you reach Pune in maybe 1 or 2 or how many ever hours. And then you ask another guy who is also pretty well versed with the whole geography, and he tells you this road is actually long. Pune shortcut is this. Through this road you can go. It is quite rough road. In the middle there is very There is no tar even. It is all mud road, but still this is a shorter route and this is the longer route. So that is where Arjuna is now. He's saying, you have, first of all, you have told me this way, then not telling me this way. Krishna, tell me which is the best way. Tell me definitely. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two? Sannyasa, he's saying sannyasa, sannyasa, sannyasa. So at least now let us try to understand this word sannyasa. The whole point of sannyasa, that is going to forest and living a simple life, is to uphold four pillars of dharma. Dharma has four pillars, which I have not introduced yet. I thought this is the right place to introduce. Dharma has four pillars. Pillar number one is mercy, known as karuna. Pillar number two is truthfulness, known as satya. Pillar number three is austerity, also known as tapasya. And fourth pillar is cleanliness, shuchi. Living a bare minimum life in the forest enabled a yogi to uplift himself by observing the four pillars closely and guarding against any offenses towards them. Now, a yogi, aspirant yogi, goes to the forest and he lives a very, very simple life with bare minimum. He doesn't take his sofa set with him. He doesn't take his smartphone with him. He lives a very, very simple life in the forest. The whole point of this living in the forest was to uphold the four pillars of dharma. See, he was merciful to all the creatures because he doesn't rely on agriculture anymore. When he's in the forest, he's not relying on agriculture. Where agriculture, there is some amount of effort that an ox has to put in the field. Nor is he dependent on a horse or a horse cart for his locomotion or for his transport. Whatever he has to go around, he goes around by himself, by his own feet. So there is very, very, very minimum, or I can even say zero amount of animal, or even he's not even hurting any people. So there is no cruelty that is happening because of him. So he can really observe the karuna, the mercy pillar. He was truthful to the highest possible degree in the forest because there is, first of all, no one to talk to. When there is no one to talk to, there is no question of being truthful. You're always truthful. And rarely, even if someone comes, he only engages in Krishna Katha. If you go visit a yogi in the forest, well, it's not going to happen today, but if you, thousands of years ago, if you visited a yogi in the forest, you could only engage them in Krishna Katha. You could ask them about some spiritual science. You could ask them to narrate some of the pastimes of Krishna. It was always going to be of spiritual topic. You could never ask them, who do you think is going to win the election this time? He is not going to, first of all, there was no election back in those days. And even if there was, he would not get involved with this. He would say, I have given up. I have renounced this world. I have renounced the material aspect of this world. And I want to concentrate on my spiritual life. And if you're going to bring up all these topics, please leave. So he was very truthful and he only spoke Krishna Katha. So his speech, austerity of his speech was happening. He was austere by reducing all luxuries and comforts to nil, basically zero. He used to sleep on the floor. He was just completely austere. The tapasya, kind of tapasya it takes to live in the forest, we can imagine. We can at least imagine. And he was very, very clean also in the forest because he observed celibacy, first of all. He had no partners and he bathed at least thrice a day. 3 times bathing thrice a day was the norm, was the basic necessity. So this is how he guarded against the 4 pillars of dharma. And when the pillars are up, he could start constructing the roof. But everybody knows that pillars are only important if the roof is going to be placed on it. It's if, not of, I'm sorry. The pillar is only important if there is going to be a roof on top. Without a roof, pillars are just poles. What is the use of pillars if there is no roof on top? So always we have to remember that dharma is the most important part, and we shouldn't be so obsessed about the pillars that we forget the roof and the roof starts to leak. The priority is the roof. I am sure this is understood. If it is understood, give me a yes. So that is sannyasa. Now here in the second shloka of chapter 5, Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Sannyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreya Karavbhav, Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate. Out of the two, Vishishyate, which is better? Personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good. No doubt, they're both good. You go to the forest and you do all that. Of course, it's nice. It's very good for liberation. But of the two, out of the two, devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Why is devotional service better than renunciation of work? Because when you work, you are engaged physically in some sort of service to the Lord. Now, let us take again our favorite Hanuman as an example. If Hanuman was given an option number 1, serving Lord Ram. Option number 2, going to the jungle and observing sannyasa. Which would he choose? It was going to be 1 or no. Would he choose service to Lord Ram, or would he choose going to the forest? Yes, he would choose serving the Lord. Yes or no? Give me yeses if you agree. Yeah. So it's quite obvious that service to Krishna, service to Rama, service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is obviously better than sannyasa. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is one of the Shastras. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, first canto, second chapter, 258 shloka is this. Prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubhi parityago vairagyam phalgu uchyate. Phalgu means false. The word false in English, false, comes from Samskrita word phalgu. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete or false renunciation. Now let's try to understand again with a very current example. Internet is good or bad? Give me yeses if internet is bad. Give me no's if internet is good. Good or bad? Is internet good? Does anybody think internet is bad? Nobody thinks internet is bad? Okay. Some people think internet is bad. Well, yes, internet is both good and bad. If you use it for good, it's good. If you use it for bad, it's bad. It's quite a cliche. We have heard this everywhere. Now, I'll take an example. If the organization ISKCON thought that internet is a bad thing, so we are not going to get engaged in this, we are not going to use internet, it would be of no use to me and you, and this whole lockdown would not have been productive. We would have got nothing out of it. So just because the internet ISKCON is using right now to propagate the words, the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, we are all taking advantage out of this. So there is nothing good, there is nothing bad. Everything can be used for the service of the Lord, provided it has a good facet to it. So this is what Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. If something can be used for the service of the Lord, we shall use it. This is quite a popular history. This is quite a popular history from Srimad Bhagavatam. King Nriga, Nrga. It's quite difficult to pronounce. It is King Nriga. He was a very, very, very charitable king. He is said to have donated as many cows as there are stars in the sky every day to Brahmanas. And not just cows which are completely ornamented with gold and not silver, gold and precious stones. He used to decorate cows in gold and precious stones and just give the cows away to thousands and thousands of Brahmana each day. So what happens once when he donated a cow, one of the cows returned to him because the cow, maybe it missed the king. It just came back when the Brahmana took the cows to his place and he let them graze. The cow just came back to the king, and accidentally on the same day, he accidentally donated this cow to some other Brahmana as well. Now, when that Brahmana who lost his cow comes searching for his cow and he finds his cow with some other Brahmana, he starts asking the Brahmana number 2. He says, what is this? Who gave you this cow? This is my cow. So that Brahmana gets angry. He says, are you calling me a thief? I'm not a thief. King Nriga gave this cow to me. So both the Brahmanas go to Nriga and say, what is this? King, what have you done? You have donated one cow to two people. You cannot do this. Do you know this is a very big papa which you have done? This is a sin. Dhriga is suddenly shocked that such a mistake happened by him, but he has to face the consequences. Due to this papa karma, in the last chapter we were discussing, the Lord said, Karmane api bodhavem bodham chavi karma, akarmascha bodham plana karmano gatihi. He says it is difficult to understand the intricacies of karma. So that is why we brought this story in this chapter. Nrika was such a punyatma, but one tiny mistake. Don't you think it's a tiny mistake? Do you think it's a big mistake? It's a tiny mistake, yes? Okay, you can give me a yes in the yes. So it's a very tiny mistake, but it's a mistake against Brahmanas, and he has donated a same cow to two people, and it is not easily, you cannot solve this conundrum. So due to the papa, due to the sin, he gets birth as a lizard in his next life. And once when Krishna's sons, Sambha and Pradyumna are playing out, they find a lizard, a giant lizard, stuck in a dry well. So they look into the well, the ball got lost or something. They're playing with a ball, the ball gets falls into the well. Maybe you've heard the story. And the two sons of Krishna look down and they quickly run to their father. They say, Papa, there is a big lizard in the well. Do something about this. So Krishna comes and as you can see here, he pulls the lizard out of the well. And the third picture, you can see the lizard appears in its true form. It shows its Devata form because he was not an ordinary king. You can call him basically a demigod kind of a king. So he shows his true form and he narrates his whole story. He says, I was a king in my past life, but I was quite a good king, but one mistake occurred because of me and this is what happened. But at least I got your darshan, my lord, and it was all worth it. For thousands and thousands of years, it was stuck in this lizard body. So it's very difficult to understand. Can we all agree that it's difficult to understand the intricacies of karma? That is what the Lord said in the past chapter. So although you cannot satisfy everybody, there is another quite a famous story. It goes around a lot. Of course, this is not true, I'm sure. There is a story of a man it's raining heavily. So there is an umbrella and he's walking in the rain, but his wife, he had a donkey as well with him. So he makes his wife sit on the donkey. He holds the umbrella and is going along. And as he's going along, people are judging him. Few people are saying, look at him. He's holding the umbrella. He's not giving his wife the umbrella. Another bunch of people say, look at him. He's causing so much pain to that donkey. First of all, it's raining. Over that, he has made his wife sit on that donkey. Such a heartless man. Another few people say, look how stupid he is. He could sit on the donkey, give the umbrella to his wife, and still he is making the wife sit on the donkey and he is holding the umbrella. What a stupid man. And so on and so on. 100 comments come. So he thinks, okay, maybe I'm wrong. So he rearranges the whole thing. He sits on the donkey, gives the umbrella to the wife, and again, n number of comments. So what I'm saying is you can never satisfy people. Satisfying people is not enough. That is how intricate the laws of karma are. You can never satisfy everybody. So again, to finally put a stamp on this question, finally the answer with a stamp on this question, karma yoga or karma sannyasa? Gneyasa nitya sannyasi yona dveshti na kamsati nirgvandho hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, liberated from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Again, for this, I'll give you a small story which my guru used to tell me a lot in 2013. This story I had heard. Not a story, it's a scenario. Tell me who is better. There are two Brahmanas who are walking on the side of the road. Good Brahmanas, well-behaved Brahmanas. They're walking on one side of the road. And a few steps ahead, there is a bar and restaurant where people are getting drunk and it's quite smelly. One of the Brahmanas crosses the road to the other side and he starts walking. So Brahmana number 1 asks Brahmana number 2, why are you going from there? Why don't you just walk straight? So Brahmana number 2 says, no, that alcohol smell, I just cannot tolerate. Why are you standing there? So he says, it's okay, I'm not affected by it. Which of these two Brahmanas do you think is better? The one who crossed the road or one who does not get affected? He just keeps walking because he knows where he has to go. If it is the Brahmana number one, give me a yes. One who does not cross the road, if you think he is better, give me a yes. If you think the other guy who crossed the road is better, give me a no. Who is better? The one who crossed the road, one who keeps going. The one who crossed the road is showing hate. Okay, I am getting a lot of Brahmana number 2 being the right. Yeah, message received. The one who crossed the road got affected by this situation, and due to which he had to change his track, due to which he got a little bit, his time got wasted. He could be he could be at his destination much faster if he did not cross the road. He has to look at the traffic, do all that. The Brahmana number 1 just did not get affected. He knows even if the alcohol smell comes, he is not going to get attracted towards it. For a second, his thought is not going to dwindle. So he just kept walking. So Brahmana number 1 who did not get affected shows this. He is free from dualities. There is no hate. There is no desire. He does not hate the people who drink, nor does he have any attraction towards the process of drinking. So this guy has, this is the answer to this question. Karma yoga or karma sannyasa. Renounce results, not action. Don't be lazy. Don't say I will not do it. Say I will do it, but the results are Lord's. Like Hanuman did. This is a very, very famous pastime of Haridas Thakur. He is known as Namacharya. He used to chant 192 rounds every day. So once what happens, he was chanting in his kutir, and Maya Devi, in form of a very beautiful girl, came to his kutir and said, I want to talk to you. I want to spend some time with you. And Haridas Thakur said, yeah, just I'll finish my rounds and I'll be with you, Mataji. Just give me 1 second. So after a couple of hours, she's like again, hey, I wanted to talk to you. What are you doing? He says, no, I have not finished my round. As soon as I finish my round, I will talk with you. So seeing him finish 192 rounds, she becomes so confirmed that this is a pure devotee. She just surrenders to him and takes Harinam Diksha from him. She says, please give me Harinam. I want to also chant with you. So this is Haridas Thakur. He did not say, oh, girl, no, I have to go away. No, he just stood right there. He doesn't hate, nor is he attracted. Did I make the point clear, or is there any doubt still? Point clear? You can give me a yes if the point is clear. Yes. Okay. Thank you. The Lord says, Brahmani adhaya karmani. In the 10th sloka, he says, Brahmani adhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karotiya lipyate nasa papena padma patram ivam bhasa. Padma patram. Padma means lotus. Patra means leaf. One who performs his duties or duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is not affected by sinful reaction, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. The lotus is born in dirty, usually it's dirty water. It is surrounded by water, it is submerged in water, and yet you can see that the leaf of the lotus is never wet. Similarly, the Lord says, a person, a devotee of mine, a devotee of the Lord, although he is drowning in this Bhavasagara, drowning in this material world, although it seems like he is submerged in it, he is a part of it. Basically, it looks like there is no difference. But he is untouched, he is not affected, he is unaffected. He can just do his duties and be detached. Lord is saying, be like that. The leaf, whenever there is a need for water, it absorbs the water, gets the job done, but it is not affected. It is not going to get wet. I hope even that point is clear. That is what God, or that is what Krishna expects from us. Takeaway is, this is quite a big takeaway. Emotional baggage is often, as often it is called, is when our past keeps pulling us back while we are trying to move on. Our prior successes do not allow us to take another step because current position feels safe enough, while past failures scare us from taking a step too. If you have been successful so far, you don't want to take a risk. If you have not been successful until now, you don't want to try. This is called baggage. Emotional baggage is the ultimate hurdle for many and makes them stagnant. They're not able to get ahead in life. Something is stopping them. That is emotional baggage. People have been successful, very successful throughout. They're like, okay, I'm not going to take any risks. This has worked for me and this is enough. And people have never okay, people who have seen a lot of failures in life, they do not want to try again because they're just tired of trying. Now let's take Hanuman's example. Again, our favorite Hanuman comes. Hanuman burns down Lanka as an offering to the Lord, not as a display of his dominance. He doesn't say, hey, look at me, I'm going to burn down Lanka next, and I'll burn down the neighboring kingdom. I don't care, I'll just go on burning down to show my dominance. No. He's not showing it as, he's not doing it as an act of dominance, he's doing it as an act of offering to the Lord. Hence, this enables him to engage in the next service immediately. As soon as he has burnt down Lanka, he comes back to Lord. He says, Prabhu, I've taught a lesson. Now what do I do? Okay, you want the bridge to be built? Done, my Lord. I will get on it. I don't need rest. He is not attached to the results of his past activities. He's not like, Lord Ram, yeah, just give me 5 minutes. Let me just explain to you how I burned down Lanka. So first, no, I went from left, then from right, this guy came and I punched him. Then I burned down the whole city. No. He finished his service. Now he's like, what next, my Lord? Just tell me what to do. And nor is he scared of the failure. Lord says, build the bridge. He doesn't say, bridge on water, huh? I don't know if that's doable. Let me do some calculations. No, Lord says, do, he will do. He just gets onto it. Because his every breath is for the service of the Lord. He doesn't take a breath if there is no service to the Lord. He is breathing to serve the Lord. Now, from this what we learn, this is how we can also develop detachment. This is a very, very frequent question. 3 p.m. class also, they keep asking this question. They say, how can we develop detachment? Like, it sounds difficult, but this is the simple process. This is a simple way to do it. All the achievements that we have achieved so far are all baggages. They are just pulling us back. Unless we place it at the lotus feet of Krishna. We just, whatever achievements till today, put it at Krishna's feet, saying, Krishna, this is all your mercy. This is my offering to you. Now tell me what next I have to do. Yes, makes sense. If it makes sense, give me a yes. If it does not make sense, give me a no. All the achievements of ours are just going to pull us back if we do not offer it to Krishna as an offering to Krishna, and we go on to the next mission that Krishna encourages us to do. Now, for this, there is a very nice video which you can see. All these points which we have made so far is represented by Prabhupada. Prabhupada went to the West, the sinful capital of the world, America. And there, among the hippies, he started to revolutionize the whole movement. You can see Prabhupada being surrounded by people who are going to be devotees very soon, but they seem to be very engaged in devotion. And see how Prabhupada is not affected. He is very grave and equipoised. Observe Prabhupada here. I'll just play it again. So that is how we should aspire to be. This is the 18th shloka. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shunicheva Shupakecha Pandita Samadarshina. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Someone who has achieved Vidya, who has gained knowledge, gained true knowledge, gained Sampanne. Brahmane Gavi Hastini. A Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, Shuni, a dog, Chaiva, and Shupakecha, a dog eater. Whether it is a Brahmana, cow, elephant, dog, or a dog eater, a Chandala, a Pandita is going to see them with equal vision. He is not going to, he will see them in equal vision. And what that means is, he sees that Atma is within, which is a fragment of the Supreme Lord, and Paramatma is also within. So he knows that everybody is driven by the modes of material nature. That is, an elephant is bound by the limitations of its body. So is a dog. So it is not, he is not going to judge them unnecessarily. He is a humble sage. He is not, he is going to see them in equal vision. Is this shloka understood? Now, let's come to the conclusion of the chapter. This world would definitely be a better place if everyone could just get along well. We could work with one another instead of working against one another. This ideology is popularly known as universal brotherhood. But there is a reason this hasn't, this hasn't been seen in practice anywhere in the world. We do not see this anywhere happening. The reason is that universal brotherhood is a distant dream until we accept a common universal father. How can there be universal brotherhood without a common father? How can I see you as my brother if we don't have a common father? Only when we accept a common father can we come together. And Krishna is that father. In upcoming shloka, he is going to clearly, boldly announce that, and also in the 14th chapter, which is coming soon. Yehi samsparsha, this is a very important shloka. Yehi samsparsha jab hoga dukkhayo na evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. Whatever it is in life, this is example I give my friends. You eat too much sweet, that is contact with material sense. You like eating sweet a lot, you eat a lot of sweet. You'll be punished. You'll never be able to eat sweet for a long time because you'll develop diabetes. You like a lot of spicy food, you're going to develop ulcers, you're going to develop high blood pressure. So, and so on. Whatever sense enjoyment you do too much, you're going to be punished for that. You're going to be limited in the future. And an intelligent person who knows this is not going to even take part in this sense enjoyment because he knows ultimately this is going to cause misery, not happiness. It's not going to give me happiness, it's going to give me pain. The material enjoyment of this world, is like a sweet poison. Very much fun in the beginning, but painful at the end. If you don't understand this point, you can please say no. The happiness that we get in this world is very temporary and sweet poison. Feels very yummy, feels very sweet. Wow, 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 I'm enjoying. Bam. A couple of years later, I'm like, why did I do that? Whereas spiritual happiness is like a bitter medicine. In the beginning, it's like poison. It's like, oh, bitter, I'm not able to tolerate. Why is this happening? No, I cannot do japa. Maybe in the beginning it happens. But as you develop taste for this, it is going to change the whole life. You're going to see it in your own lives. So what do you want? Is it sweet poison or bitter medicine? You can say yes if it is bitter medicine. You can say no if it is sweet poison. If you want sweet poison, say no, I'm happy with sweet poison. And people who want bitter medicine, say yes. Yeah, I got a lot of yeses. Thank you. So I think this point is clear. Now let us shed some more light on this with, again, current examples. This is a mercury lamp, and I'm sure everybody has witnessed this. I mean, not anymore. Mercury lamps are not being used right now. But back when there was mercury lamps, you could see a lot of flies fluttering around the mercury lamp. And if you have observed closely, the next day morning, you can see a lot of flies stuck inside the covering of the lamp. So these are so attracted by the light that they will go inside to the bulb and they'll just lose their life because they're not able to come out again. Yeah, that's how they get stuck inside and they just cannot come outside. And due to the sheer heat, they just lose their body moisture and die. Quite a painful death. Why did this happen? Because it just couldn't control the sense. Which sense? Eyes. Here is a deer. Maybe some of you know this. Deers have big ears. Maybe that's why they're called deers. Big ears. Anyway, so deers really love music, and especially the percussion music, like the drums and all that. So if a hunter goes with a drum and he sees a deer and he starts playing the drum, the deer is going to completely get hypnotized and it will look back like that. And that is a trick used by many wildlife photographers. They just start playing music and the deer just turns and they get a very nice click. Now, due to that attraction to the music, it's not able to, it's gotten hypnotized by the music. It's not able to resist itself. It just stays still. And that gives the hunter an opportunity to, launch a arrow or even shoot it with a bullet. So due to its ears, it loses its life. So flies loses its life because of the tendency of the eye, uncontrollable urge of the eye, whereas deer loses its life due to the uncontrollable tendency of hearing music. And this is a bumblebee. Now bumblebees love smell. They'll just love beautiful. Wherever there is a beautiful smelling flower, they just go right there. And what happens, if you know this, lotus closes every evening. So this bumblebee, which is so attracted by the lotus, it just flutters around and goes and sits on the sits in the center of the lotus, and it just cannot control itself. It just loses itself, drinking nectar and whatnot. Just closes eventually, and the bumblebee is now not able to go out. And when the lotus closes really tight, there is no oxygen supply, so the bumblebee suffocates to death. Now, why did bumblebee lose its life? Due to the urge of the nose. And here's a fish. How does fish lose its life? By getting attracted to that bait. Usually it's worm or something. It has enough food in the sea or river, wherever it is, it has enough food. Because if there was not enough food, the fish wouldn't be alive. But still, it is curious. It's like, okay, maybe this is not yummy. Maybe that is yummy. I should go check it out. And bam, it lost its life. Then there is an elephant. Do you know how elephants are caught? Does anybody know how elephants are caught? I'll allow you to unmute yourself. How do you catch an elephant? Can you just go and you put a net on it or something? You can unmute yourselves. Yeah. How do you catch an elephant? Nobody knows? Okay, I guess nobody knows.
I think by digging a deep ground.
Yeah, you dig a pit, but the elephant will not volunteer to fall into the pit. What should you do?
By keeping a banana.
Banana. That would be quite cheap, Yeah, that's a good idea. I should try that. But no, elephant cannot actually see if you give one banana, it's a tiny thing to it. The best thing what they do is they put a she elephant, a female elephant, they put it on the other side of the pit. So if you see a male elephant over there, you put a female elephant over there and make sure there's a pit in the middle, cover the pit. You dig a huge pit of elephant size, of course, and you cover it with a net and put some leaves on top. The poor elephant doesn't know there is a pit, but it is interested in this female elephant. So it comes running towards this female elephant, asking for its number. And bam, it falls into the pit. And female elephant is like, hey, got. Now, then this male elephant is starved for a few days. Then it's weakened, then it's pulled out, then it's fed, it's shown who's the boss. And the elephant just lost its whole life. It's now a slave to a man. So what we see here is 5 senses are very, very strong in one of these animals. The flies have very strong eyes, urge of the eye. Deer has very strong urge of the ear. Bumblebee, very strong urge of the nose. Fish, very strong urge of the tongue. Elephant, very strong urge of companionship, of skin. What about humans? Which of the senses is very strong in humans? Again, I'll let you people to unmute yourself. Which is the strongest sense in humans?
All senses, sir.
Eyes?
Yes.
Eyes are the strongest, you think?
Eyes,
Yes.
nose,
Eyes,
feelings.
nose, ears, tongue, everything, right? Humans, the problem is all our senses are out of control. Unless you know how to control it. You can get lost in music. If you have exam tomorrow, but you're listening to songs, you forgot to study, you slept off, next day, bam, fail. You like eating so much, you eat, become fat. You're unhealthy. You lose your health. You like watching maybe cartoon or whatever, you lose your time. All the senses of our body are so strong and they're so difficult to control that we can get lost. Lucky are the animals in which only one of the senses is strong. Here we have all the 5 senses out of control. Right? Can we agree to that? Can give me a yes if you agree. Okay, I'm getting yeses. Thank you. Now coming to yesterday's question, one of the Prabhus asked about knowledge. So I said tomorrow I will cover it. Now let us consider an example. You want to know more. You want to know about the structure of an atom. There are three paths which you can follow. Everything is made up of atoms. So you just pick up a stone, look at the stone deeply for a long time, concentrate really hard, for a long time, and hope that you can see the structure of an atom. Look really close, maybe you can see an atom. That is option number one. Does it work? Yes or no? Will you be able to see the structure of an atom by looking deep into a stone? Clearly, yes. All the responses are no. Here's option number two. Close your eyes, take a deep breath. Now imagine the structure of an atom. I think atom should be square in shape because I know how to draw a square, and it should have wings because I don't know. Just imagine. Can you imagine the structure of an atom? Can you guess the structure of an atom just out of nowhere? Yeah. No, you cannot do that. That's the response I'm getting. No. Here's the third option. Clearly will be the favorite of everybody. Just go to your nearest university, head on to the physics department and ask anybody, the professor, the student, or even a peon probably knows the basics of the structure of an atom. They cannot show you an atom. Nobody can show you an atom. Although it is everywhere, still you cannot see the atom. But if you keep your faith in the teacher or the student or the peon, if you keep the faith, if you are willing to give faith to them, just as they did, even they kept faith in their guru, or should I say teacher. The head of the department of physics also had a teacher someday, and he kept his faith in that teacher. That's how he learned. And that teacher also kept in faith in his teacher, and that's how he learned. So you can learn. And once you know enough, once you have understood enough of the whatever was taught to you, you can go out and experiment and see whether it works or not. But first you have to hear, understand, then you can experiment. Yes, correct? Now again, there is one rule, provided the source of information is certified. If they are giving you information of atomic structure from a textbook which is written by a scientist, that is fine. What if they're giving you some imaginary? That shouldn't be. So as long as the certified source is there, as long as the source of information is certified, the information that they're going to give you, you can trust it, accept it. Once you understand, go out and experiment it. Now, these three options have a word in Samskrita. The first option, which is looking at a stone very deeply, maybe you will someday, maybe stare at it for 5 days. Who knows? Nobody has tried. Try this today. Look at it for 5-6 hours. Maybe you can see the structure. This is called Pratyaksha Pramana. Pratyaksha, Prati, Aksha. My own eyes when I see, that is Pratyaksha Pramana. If I see, I believe. Aksha means eyes. Prati means mine. My eyes. If I see with my eyes, I believe. This is what the world thinks is the best source, but it's not. Option number 2 is called Anumana Pramana. Anu, using my mind. Anumana, mana. So I imagine and I get it. Anumana Pramana also doesn't work. Not always. Basically never. The final option is called Shabda Pramana. And knowingly, unknowingly, today, we are very, very dependent on Shabda Pramana. Google is the ultimate Shabda Pramana today. If you want to know something, you just Google it, bam, you get the truth. What is the corona count in India today? Nearly 32 lakhs. Okay, I believe it. Why don't we ever doubt Google? Because we know that Google gets its information from certified source. Similarly, when we are interested, keen to know more about spiritual science, we have to make sure a person is not talking just out of his Anumana Pramana. It is Shabda Pramana coming from the right source. Can we agree to that? I hope you all can agree to that. Just give me a yes. Yes, thank you. So the Lord here is saying, this is the Shabda Pramana which is takeaway for today. Bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram surhridam sarvabhutanam nyatva mam shantim richati. Surhridam. The sages knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme Lord of all planets, and demigods and the benefactor and well-wisher of all the living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. How to be freed from material miseries? How to be free from the real miseries of this world? Which are the real miseries? It is Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. What does Vyadhi mean? Vyadhi means disease, and I don't have to tell you how painful, or even if you don't have the disease, it's quite painful. Like right now, none of us has corona, but we are still under pain because of corona, because the kind of situation it puts upon us is unbearable. Vyadhi is painful, Mrityu is painful, death is quite painful. None of us have the experience of Mrityu, but we know it's going to be painful. Jara is old age. We have observed people getting old. We have grandparents. It's quite a painful situation. Young kids can just jump around, run their head like this and get dizzy, and nothing happens. Next day they're all right. In a couple of minutes they're all right. Whereas grandparents, even if they get up wrong, it hurts. The back hurts, the knee hurts. So Jara is also painful. Then again, the cause of all these three miseries is what? Disease is there, old age is there, death is there because of Janma. So Janma is the biggest miserable thing, and also the process of Janma is painful for the person who is giving birth and the person who is taking birth as well. That is why during childbirth so many deaths are there, because it's painful for both the parties, the mother and the child. Both have a high risk of dying. That's why the medical science is now doing so many things to avoid this. Anyway, Janma is also very painful for both parties. Mrityu is painful, Jara is painful, Vyadhi is painful, and these are the main miseries of material world. And the only freedom from these miseries is the Lord. Bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarva lokamaheshwaram suhridam sarva bhutanam nyatva mam shantim gacchati. He is the only real well-wisher, and everybody else is just not really the best well-wisher. Some of them are just pretending. You know, none of the professions are really noble in this world. It is Kali Yuga. The only real well-wisher of us is the Supreme Lord. Now, what do I do with this information? Let's see. A brick of gold can be used as a paperweight, and it will function as a paperweight better than a paperweight. If you want a paper not to fly away, what is better, a brick of gold or a tiny paperweight? What will work better, you think? A brick of gold will work very, very well as a paperweight. But if you use a brick as a paperweight, are you a really smart person? Is that a good idea? But the purpose of the brick of gold was much superior. And if you used it as a paperweight, anyone would be right to call you a fool. You can do so many things with gold. You can use it to make high-end electronics like processors and contact points of the processors, and many of the circuits are gold because it's a really good conductor of electricity. So or even ornaments. So gold, the purpose of gold is not to be used as a paperweight, but it has much superior uses. Now, what does that mean? One who thinks human life is for sense enjoyment, that is making money, enjoying life, you live only once, YOLO, all that things, whoever thinks, is an even bigger fool for wasting away such a precious life in mundane endeavors, which animals do better than us. And there are, if you think you really enjoy sleeping, can you really sleep as much as a lion does? It sleeps for 18 hours. Lion is doing a better job at sleeping than you. You might have polished it in a very nice way. You have a bed, you have a cot, you sleep under a fan, but a lion enjoys its own simple sleep much better than you do, much better than I do. Whatever enjoyment it is, if you think you're enjoying eating, there are animals who eat more than us, eat better than us. So if you are spending your whole life, wasting your whole life in the mundane endeavor of sense enjoyment, meaningless sense enjoyment, anybody would be right to call you a fool in that case also, because you're closing your eyes to the real happiness, who is Krishna and Krishna Bhakti, Krishna Prema. That is the real happiness of life, and that is where our prime goal should be. This is the summary of the chapter, and now I'll take questions. You can use the chat box or unmute yourself, just one at a time, please.
So, Prabhuji, is it true that Radharani, while she took birth, right? At that time, she didn't open her eyes until Krishna Bhagwan has saw her.
Yes, yes,
Touch.
because
Uh,
yes, because her whole she appeared for Krishna. She appeared to enjoy the rasas with Krishna, and without Krishna, she has no purpose of opening her eyes. She appeared, but she waited for Krishna to come. She wanted Krishna to be the first thing she glances. Such a, you know that I am. That's quite amazing.
that was
Hare
really
Krishna.
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, when that too, when Krishna comes very close to her, she smells the tulsi off of him, and that is when she opens her eyes, saying, "Oh, my Krishna is here."
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, sir, I have a question.
Ji Mata.
My question. So, like as humans, we all have certain ambitions or things that we want to achieve in life, right? So, my question is, how do we effectively channel this towards the service of the Lord?
Mataji, good question, very good question. See, the thing is, all the great devotees of the Lord have been, I can say, overachievers. Now, if you take Hanuman or Arjun or Prahlad Maharaj or Bali Maharaj or any of the popular devotees of the Lord of, or even of today, the one of the famous devotees of the Lord, Alfred Ford, Ambarish Maharaj, the heir to the Ford industry, they are all overachievers. Krishna never asks you to become a sannyasi. That's what this whole chapter was about. He doesn't say give up. He says work, but offer the results to me. And that too, he is not saying offer the results to me like do the job and go become a sannyasi. No, he says constantly keep bettering yourself, keep engaged in my service, and remember all your duties which you're doing is do it as a duty, do it as a service to me. So if you have some goal in your life, achieve that goal and tell yourself that this is my goal and I will achieve it and I'll offer the results to Krishna, and I promise you will achieve the goal without a single glitch, because I can tell you from my own personal experience that you are going to achieve whatever you want as long as the goal also has Krishna in the picture. I'll do this and offer it to Krishna.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir. Yeah. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Well, okay then. Thanks for your time, everybody. Join me tomorrow for the next chapter. Hare Krishna. Thank you.